Millionaire CEO went to buy a wedding anniversary cake and saw his ex behind the counter holding a little girl. "Mommy says I have your eyes." The little girl says it with pure curiosity, chin tilted up, fingers dusted with flour. Clifton Bayer doesn't answer. His hand, halfway to his wallet, freezes. Behind the counter, Laura's shoulders stiffen, not dramatically, just enough. Her pen stops moving. The bell above the bakery door swings gently behind him, unnoticed. The girl studies his face like she's solving a puzzle. "I've seen your picture before," she adds. "You look younger there." Laura inhales once, controlled. "Careful. Jesse," she says softly, "why don't you check the back trays? But I want to know." "Sweetheart." The child hesitates, then disappears through the swinging kitchen door. Silence fills the small space. Clifton finally speaks, but his voice doesn't sound like his own. "What picture?" Laura doesn't look at him right away. She wipes her hands on a folded towel. A simple movement. Precise. "One from college," she says. "I kept it." He swallows. 7 years compressed into a single breath. He came here to buy a cake. He did not expect to meet a child who studies his face like she belongs to him. An hour earlier, Clifton stood 30 floors above Seattle, reviewing numbers that could move markets. Founder of Aether Dynamics, a cybersecurity firm that grew from a one-room startup into a global force before he turned 30. His name appeared in business magazines. Investors waited weeks for a meeting. His calendar operated with surgical precision. At 27, he purchased a glass-walled office overlooking Elliott Bay. At 32, he married Pinky Bernhard, poised, intelligent, comfortable in rooms filled with influence. Today marked their 3rd wedding anniversary. At 4:12 p.m., Pinky texted him, "Don't forget dessert, something thoughtful." He closed his laptop early, a rare decision, and instructed his driver to head toward Ballard. He spotted the bakery by accident, a small storefront with clean lettering, Hearth and Honey. He stepped inside, intending efficiency. Select cake, pay, leave. Return home to a reservation overlooking the water. Deliver something elegant, complete the evening. Clifton Bayer understood completion. He understood acquisitions, mergers, quarterly projections. He did not understand why a little girl's voice now made his pulse misbehave. Some men conquer industries. Few are prepared to confront their own past. Clifton built systems that protected corporations from digital threats. He negotiated contracts across continents. He knew how to anticipate risk before it surfaced. Yet nothing in his training prepared him for this. Walking into a bakery for an anniversary cake, and walking out questioning the foundation of his life. Have you ever accomplished everything you once dreamed of, only to feel like something essential was left behind? Have you ever told yourself you would fix it later? He once believed love could wait, that devotion could be scheduled between flights, that the future would reward sacrifice. Standing across from Laura now, he sees a version of life he cannot measure in revenue. Her voice is steady, her posture composed. The years have shaped her differently. "You look successful," she says. "You look happy," he replies. A quiet pause. Happiness looks different now. Different. The word lands heavier than accusation. What happens when the life you postponed returns, with a child who carries your features? What if the past didn't close the door? It simply waited. Because this isn't about dessert. It's about presence. Clifton glances toward the kitchen door where Jesse disappeared. "I didn't know," he says quietly. "I know," Laura answers. No bitterness. No raised voices, just facts that arrive too late. He looks around the bakery, framed photos, handwritten menu boards, a small chalk sign announcing Saturday baking classes for parents and kids. This place wasn't built for applause. It was built for consistency. "You stayed," he says. "Yes." A simple word, anchored. Stay with this story. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves as turning points. They arrive disguised as errands, as ordinary stops on an ordinary afternoon, and then everything shifts. If stories about real choices, the kind that don't come with villains or dramatic explosions, mean something to you, stay here. Subscribe. Walk through this with us. Because Clifton Bayer thought he understood success, he's about to learn the difference between building a company and building a life. And the lesson begins with a cake he hasn't even ordered yet. By 6:30 that morning, Clifton had already closed a deal that would dominate the next tech headline cycle. He preferred early hours, fewer interruptions, cleaner thinking. From his office window, ferries traced quiet lines across the water. The city below operated in layers: commuters, cranes, construction crews, executives in pressed suits stepping into polished elevators. He belonged to the last category. Aether Dynamics just secured the Singapore contract, his CFO said during the morning briefing. Clifton nodded once. "Draft the expansion proposal. We'll announce in third quarter. No celebration, just forward movement. His assistant handed him a leather folder. Anniversary tonight, sir. Reservation confirmed for 8. I'll be there. He always meant that when he said it. At home, Pinky moved through their waterfront condo with calm efficiency. She managed charity boards, hosted private dinners, remembered names that mattered. Their partnership functioned seamlessly in public spaces. They did not argue. They coordinated. That afternoon, she sent him a photo of the dress she planned to wear. Elegant, understated. Don't forget dessert, she added. Clifton stared at the message longer than necessary. Not because he forgot, because dessert felt symbolic. 3 years of marriage. No conflict, no chaos, just stability. Their conversations rarely drifted beyond schedules and shared obligations. Are you happy? She had once asked him, not accusing, curious. Yes, he answered automatically. It was the correct response. He provided. She supported. They advanced. Efficiency can resemble harmony if you don't look closely. At 3:50 p.m., he closed his laptop before his team expected him to. The small deviation felt significant. Everything all right? His assistant asked. Yes. He stepped into the elevator and checked his reflection in the mirrored walls. Tailored suit, controlled expression, a man who rarely allowed surprise. 40 minutes later, he stood inside a bakery he'd never noticed before, and lost control in the quietest way possible. They met at 20 in a coffee shop that couldn't decide if it wanted to be modern or nostalgic. Clifton sat alone, surrounded by notebooks, rehearsing a pitch to himself under his breath. Laura interrupted him. You've said scalable infrastructure 6 times, she smiled. Maybe simplify. He blinked up at her, slightly annoyed, slightly intrigued. You were counting? I was trying to study. You were louder than you thought. She took the seat across from him without invitation. What are you building? Security software, he said, for companies that don't realize they're vulnerable yet. She leaned forward, interested. Not impressed, interested. That sounds ambitious. It is. Good. That was it. No grand spark, just recognition. Their first apartment had uneven floors and heating that worked when it felt like it. The kitchen light flickered unless you tapped the switch twice. Clifton built his first prototype at a second-hand desk, pushed against a window that overlooked a brick wall. Laura sat on the floor most nights, textbooks open, listening to him explain algorithms she didn't fully understand. Someday, he told her one evening, fingers flying across his keyboard, I'm going to give you a life that feels easy. She rested her chin on her knees. I don't want easy. He didn't look up. What do you want? You. It was simple when she said it. He smiled at the screen. You'll have me. And everything else. Back then, everything else seemed like proof of devotion. When the first investor showed interest, Clifton paced their living room for an hour straight. They want a presentation next week, he said. You'll nail it. I can't mess this up. You won't. She believed in him with a steadiness that made doubt feel unnecessary. When funding came through, he lifted her off the floor in a rare burst of celebration. This changes everything, he said. It did. Flights replaced late-night takeout. Conference calls replaced quiet evenings. His phone buzzed through dinner. It's temporary, he promised the first time he missed a movie they'd planned to see. She nodded. The second time, she reheated her own plate. The third time, she stopped setting 2 places at the table. One night, he returned after midnight to find her awake, sitting at the kitchen counter. I feel like I'm competing with your future, she said softly. He loosened his tie. This is for us. She held his gaze. It doesn't feel like that. He kissed her forehead and opened his laptop. Deadlines felt urgent. Love felt patient. He assumed patience had no limit. The note she left was folded neatly on the counter. I hope you become everything you're chasing. I just don't want to disappear while you do. He read it once. Then he packed for a flight to Berlin, because work didn't hesitate, and he mistook momentum for progress. Success did not arrive gently. It accelerated. Within 12 months, Aether Dynamics outgrew its original office. Within 18, Clifton was flying business class to cities he once only read about. Singapore, Berlin, Austin, Toronto. He learned how to sleep upright on planes, learned how to negotiate across time zones, learned how to answer questions without revealing doubt. He did not learn how to notice silence. At first, Laura adjusted. She kept busy, finished her certification, started tutoring on weekends. She sent him photos of small things, a new plant in the apartment, a crooked shelf she installed herself. He responded with brief enthusiasm. Looks great. Proud of you. Landing soon. Call you later. Later became a habit. The missed dinner happened on a Thursday. I'll be home by 7, he said that morning. She cooked anyway. By 8:15, the food cooled untouched. At 9:40, she texted. Still at the office? He didn't see it until 11:12. Emergency meeting. Sorry. Rain check? She replied with a simple, okay. The second time, she didn't cook. The third time, she didn't ask. Their conversations shifted from curiosity to logistics. Will you be home this weekend? Probably not. Okay. The word lost warmth. One evening, she stood in the doorway of his home office, watching him type. Do you remember when we used to eat on the floor? She asked. He smiled faintly. Because we didn't own chairs. No, she said gently. Because we liked sitting close. He glanced at the screen clock. Can we talk after this call? She nodded. After the call, he forgot. It wasn't cruelty. It was prioritization. And prioritization, repeated often enough, becomes identity. The night she said, I feel like I'm competing with your future. There was no anger in her voice, only fatigue. He walked toward her. This won't always be like this. But it is right now, she answered. He believed temporary sacrifice justified long-term reward. She wanted presence in the present. 2 different timelines. 2 different definitions of love. The distance didn't explode. It widened quietly, and quiet, when ignored, grows heavy. He came home early that evening by accident. A client canceled. A meeting moved. The apartment felt unusually still. Her shoes were gone from the hallway, the bookshelf lighter, the framed photo from their graduation missing from the side table. The note waited in the center of the kitchen counter, neatly folded, no dramatic handwriting, no smudges. He read it standing up, then again sitting down. I hope you become everything you're chasing. I just don't want to disappear while you do. There was no accusation in the words. That made them harder to argue with. He checked his phone. No missed calls, no dramatic goodbye, just absence. He called her once. It rang until voicemail. He didn't leave a message. Instead, he opened his laptop. He told himself space might be good, that she needed time, that once this funding round closed, he would fix it properly. He booked a flight that night. Berlin couldn't wait, and he convinced himself love wouldn't leave permanently. Over time, her memory became something he stored away carefully, like an old photograph, meaningful but not urgent. He moved forward. He grew wealthier. He grew respected. He grew accustomed to quiet spaces, until a little girl in a pink apron tilted her head and said she had his eyes. And suddenly, the past was no longer archived. It was standing in front of him. Back in the bakery, Clifton's gaze lingers on the flour smudge Jesse left on the counter. He remembers another kitchen, another version of himself. Laura clears her throat softly. What kind of cake would you like? He hesitates. He built a company by predicting threats before they surfaced. Yet he never anticipated losing someone who asked only for his attention. Have you ever been so focused on becoming someone that you forgot who was beside you while you were building it? Not because you didn't care, but because you assumed they would wait. Moments like that rarely announce their importance when they happen. You realize it later. If you've ever had to choose between ambition and presence, or if you're still choosing, tell me below. Because this story isn't about regret. It's about what a person does once they finally see clearly. And Clifton is just beginning to see. Clifton had driven past Ballard hundreds of times. He had never noticed the bakery. It wasn't flashy. No oversized signage. No influencer crowd outside taking photos. Just warm light through wide windows and a simple wooden door. Inside, the air carried butter and vanilla. Not overpowering. Familiar. A chalkboard menu listed options in careful handwriting. Dark chocolate ganache. Honey almond sponge, classic vanilla with fresh berries. There were no price tags displayed prominently. Confidence doesn't advertise loudly. He adjusted his cufflinks out of habit before stepping fully inside. The bell chimed. Laura looked up. Recognition does something unusual. It erases time but keeps memory intact. Her hair was shorter now, framing her face. She wore a simple apron, sleeves rolled to her elbows, no jewelry beyond a thin band on her right hand, not a wedding ring. Just metal. For a second, neither moved. Then she blinked, professional instinct returning first. Hi, she said calmly. Welcome to Hearth and Honey. Her tone was measured, polite, as if she greeted him every day. He cleared his throat. I didn't know you opened this 5 years ago, she said smoothly, finishing the thought before he could stumble. He nodded once. 5 years. That meant she built this long after she left him. A small girl stood on a stool near the display case, carefully arranging macarons with intense concentration. She looked up at Clifton. Children don't hide curiosity. Mommy, she said brightly. Is he famous? The word dropped between them. Mommy. Clifton's body reacted before his mind caught up. Laura's fingers tightened slightly around the order pad in her hand. Jesse, she said gently, focus on the display. but Jesse was already studying him. Clifton crouched slightly, lowering himself to her eye level without thinking. Laura inhaled quietly. "One from college," she said. "College." The word felt distant and immediate at the same time. Jesse leaned forward. "Mommy says I have your eyes." Silence. No background music. No dramatic collapse. Just a man who built empires, trying to process a sentence from a child. Clifton stands slowly. His pulse doesn't race wildly. It tightens, controlled but forceful. He studies Jessie more carefully now. The curve of her eyebrows, the shape of her smile, the way she holds eye contact without flinching. Children are honest in ways adults train themselves not to be. Laura steps around the counter. "Jessie, sweetheart, can you check if the cinnamon rolls are cooling properly?" Jessie hesitates. "But I'm talking." "I know. Just a minute." The child sighs dramatically but obeys, disappearing through the kitchen door. When the door swings closed, the air changes. Clifton keeps his voice low. "You kept a picture?" "Yes." "Why?" She meets his gaze directly. "Because it was part of my life." There's no accusation in her tone, no defensiveness, just fact. He nods slowly. "You look," he begins, then stops. "Different," she offers. "Steady." A faint smile touches her mouth. "That's the goal." He glances around the bakery again. Framed photos line one wall. Jessie covered in flour, Jessie holding a piping bag too large for her hands, Jessie asleep in a booth while Laura counts receipts. No man appears in any of them. "How old is she?" he asks carefully. 6. The number lands with weight. 6 years. He calculates without meaning to. The timeline aligns. Laura watches his expression shift. "I found out 2 weeks after I left," she says quietly. He blinks. "What?" "I was pregnant." The words are delivered gently, not as a weapon. He steps back slightly, as if distance will help him think. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried." He searches his memory. Flights, meetings, an acquisition in London. "You were overseas closing funding," she continues. "I called. Your assistant said you weren't taking personal interruptions." His jaw tightens. He remembers that rule. No distractions during negotiations. "I stopped after the 3rd attempt," she adds. "You should have kept trying." The words come out sharper than intended. She doesn't react defensively. "I needed someone who was already there," she says simply. The sentence doesn't attack. It concludes. Clifton exhales slowly. Across the room, the kitchen door cracks open. Jessie peeks through. "Can I come back now?" Laura nods. The girl runs forward and grabs the edge of the counter. "Do you like chocolate cake?" she asks Clifton. He looks at her fully this time. "I think I might love it," Jessie beams. "Mommy makes the best one." Clifton's gaze lifts to Laura. "You stayed in Seattle," he says quietly. "Yes. And you built this?" "Yes. For her?" "For us. There's a difference." He feels it. For years he equated providing with loving. Standing inside this small bakery, watching flour dust cling to a 6-year-old sleeve, he realizes provision can exist without presence. Jessie tugs his sleeve lightly. "Are you going to buy something?" He looks at Laura. "Yes," he says. But the cake no longer feels like the point. Clifton reaches for his wallet, more to steady his hands than to pay. That's when he notices it. A small framed photograph placed beside the register. Not centered, not highlighted, just there. Laura sits on a beach blanket, hair pulled back by the wind. Jessie, younger, maybe 3, perched in her lap. Both laughing at something outside the frame. The shoreline behind them is unmistakable. Alki. He remembers walking there years ago. Cold sand, cheap coffee, big plans. He steps closer. "No one else?" he asks quietly. Laura follows his gaze. No, not defensive. Not apologetic. Just no. Jessie climbs onto the stool again. "That was my first time seeing the ocean," she announces proudly. "Mommy said we should celebrate something." "What were you celebrating?" Clifton asks, still studying the photo. Laura answers instead. "Opening week." He nods slowly. "You built this alone." "I wasn't alone," she says gently, resting a hand on Jessie's shoulder. The distinction is clear. He notices something else in the picture. Peace. Not excitement. Not ambition. Peace. He straightens. "How long have you had the bakery?" he asks, though she already told him. 5 years. And before that? Catering. Small events. Anything that let me set my own hours, so you could be present. She meets his eyes when he says it. Yes. It reflects. For a moment he imagines an alternate version of his own office. Smaller, less polished, but with space carved out for ordinary afternoons. He clears his throat. What kind of cake would you recommend? Professional again. Laura steps behind the counter. That depends. What's the occasion? He hesitates. Anniversary. Jessie gasps softly. Ooh. Laura's pen pauses briefly before moving again. How many years? She asks. 3. Congratulations, she replies. The word is even, measured, not warm, not cold. Jessie leans forward. Do you love her? The question is innocent, the answer isn't. Clifton looks at the child, then at Laura. Yes, he says carefully. Jessie nods, satisfied, as if that settles something important. But Laura's expression doesn't shift. She writes down the order. Chocolate ganache, honey filling, simple design. He watches her hands move. Those same hands once traced circles on his back when he couldn't sleep. Those same hands now steady in a life he wasn't part of. Jessie tilts her head again. You look like you forgot something, she tells him. He almost laughs. I think I did. Laura closes the order book. It'll be ready in 20 minutes, she says. He nods but doesn't leave. The small tables near the window are empty. Can I wait? He asks. Of course. He chooses the corner table. Not too close, not too far. Jessie wanders over with a coloring sheet and crayons. Do you want to help? She asks. I'm not very good at coloring inside the lines. That's okay, she replies seriously. I'll fix it. He smiles faintly. Laura moves between the kitchen and the counter with quiet efficiency, measuring, mixing, checking the oven. Clifton watches without meaning to. There's something steady about her movements. No rush, no frantic energy. You seem different, he says when she passes his table. I am. How? She considers the question. I stop chasing things that don't stay. The sentence lands gently. He leans back in his chair. I thought I was building security, he says. For us. I know. You don't sound angry. I was, she admits. For a while. What changed? She sets a bowl down carefully before answering. I realized anger still ties you to someone. He absorbs that. Jessie holds up her drawing. It's 3 stick figures holding hands. Look, she says proudly. He studies it. 1 tall figure, 1 medium, 1 small. Who's that? He asks. That's Mommy. She points to the middle. And that's me. He gestures to the tallest one. Jessie shrugs. I don't know yet. The words hit harder than accusation. Clifton glances at Laura. She pretends not to notice. You're good with her, he says quietly. I had to be. He exhales. I would have. She stops him with a look. Don't rewrite history in one afternoon. The correction isn't cruel. It's grounded. Jessie climbs into the booth beside him without invitation. You're tall, she observes. Mommy says I'll be tall too. He chuckles softly. That's usually how it works. She studies his face again. Are you coming back? The question is simple. He hesitates. Yes, he says. Laura looks up sharply, but he continues. If that's okay. Jessie nods decisively. Okay. The oven timer chimes. Laura removes the cake, letting it cool before applying the glaze. Clifton stands and approaches the counter again. I need to ask you something, he says quietly. Jessie hops down, sensing the shift. Laura wipes her hands. What is it? His voice lowers. Is she mine? The room feels smaller. Laura doesn't look away. Yes. No hesitation. No build-up. Just truth. The word settles between them. Not explosive, not dramatic, but final. Clifton closes his eyes briefly. When he opens them, nothing in the bakery has changed. But everything in his life has. Yes. Laura doesn't soften it. She doesn't harden it either. Jessie hums quietly to herself near the display case, unaware that a single word has just redrawn the shape of a man's future. Clifton exhales slowly. 6 years. He does the math again, even though he already knows. I didn't know, he says, not as defense, as fact. I know, Laura replies. The cake sits between them, glossy chocolate settling smoothly across its surface. Ordinary, carefully made, nothing dramatic about it. When? He asks. I found out 2 weeks after I left. The timeline snaps into place with uncomfortable clarity. He remembers those 2 weeks vividly. London, back-to-back investor meetings, a hotel room overlooking the Thames, 3 calls from an unknown number he declined because he was in negotiations. He presses his thumb against the edge of the counter. You called? Yes. How many times? 3. He nods once. He remembers instructing his assistant. No personal interruptions during funding week. No distractions. The words echo now with a different tone. I thought if it mattered, they'd email, he says quietly. I did, she replies. He looks up. I never saw it. She studies him for a moment, not searching for guilt, just assessing truth. I stopped after that. Jesse skips back over. Is the cake ready? Almost, Laura says gently. Clifton looks at the child, at the ease in her posture, the security in her voice. You raised her alone, he says. Yes. Why didn't you try again? Laura doesn't hesitate. I needed someone who was already there. The sentence doesn't attack. It concludes. He absorbs it fully. He reaches for his wallet and pays for the cake. Not because the transaction matters, but because he doesn't know what else to do with his hands. Jesse walks him to the door. Are you coming back? She asks again. He looks at Laura before answering. Yes, this time it isn't automatic. It's deliberate. He steps outside holding a cake meant to celebrate a life that suddenly feels incomplete. The bell chimes behind him. Inside, Laura watches him go, not with longing, not with regret, just with caution. Clifton doesn't drive home immediately. He sits in his car with the engine off. The bakery window reflects faintly against the glass. 6 years. He scrolls through archived emails on his phone. Search, Laura Collins. There it is. Subject line, we need to talk. Timestamp 2:17 a.m. London time. He opens it. I know you're busy. I wouldn't interrupt if it wasn't important. Please call me when you can. No accusation, no explanation, just urgency wrapped in restraint. He checks his call history from that month. 3 missed calls. He rubs his forehead slowly. He remembers that week clearly. Block personal calls, he told his assistant. Nothing interferes with this round. He thought discipline required isolation. He thought focus demanded sacrifice. He never asked who was paying the cost. Back inside the bakery, Jesse laughs at something Laura says. The sound reaches him faintly even through the closed car door. He realizes something uncomfortable. He wasn't abandoned. He was unavailable. There's a difference. His phone lights up. Pinky, are you on your way? He stares at the message. 3 years of marriage. No secrets. And now something impossible to ignore. Running late, he types. He starts the engine. For the first time in years, success feels like poor timing. The next evening, Clifton returns. No driver this time, no suit jacket. Just himself. The bell rings again as he steps inside. Jesse looks up immediately. You came back. I said I would. Laura stands still behind the counter, reading him carefully. I won't stay long, he says. I just need to understand. She nods once. Jesse, can you organize the sprinkles? The child groans but complies. Clifton steps closer. Why didn't you tell me in person? He asks. I tried to reach you. You could have come to the office. She tilts her head slightly. The office with security downstairs and assistants screening visitors? He stops. She isn't mocking him. She's reminding him. I stood outside once, she continues calmly. For 15 minutes. I watched you through the glass wall. You were in a meeting. He stiffens. I realize something, she says. If I had to fight that hard to be heard before the baby was even born, I already had my answer. He swallows. That's not fair. No, she agrees softly. It wasn't. Jesse hums in the background, lining up tiny sugar jars. I wasn't trying to punish you, Laura continues. I was trying to protect myself. And her. Clifton's voice lowers. You decided I wouldn't show up. I decided I couldn't gamble her stability on hoping you would. The distinction matters. He nods slowly. Does she know? He asks. She knows you were important to me once, and now? Laura studies him carefully. Now I'm deciding who you are to her. Not cruel, measured. He accepts that. I want a chance, he says. She doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she watches Jesse carefully measure sprinkles with intense concentration. Chance isn't a speech, Laura says at last. It's repetition. He nods. I can do repetition. Her gaze sharpens slightly. We'll see. Jesse looks up. Are you staying for cookies? Clifton hesitates only briefly. Yes, because this time, he isn't negotiating a contract. He's asking to be allowed in. That night, the anniversary dinner feels staged. Soft lighting, reserved table, a view of the water. Pinky looks elegant in deep blue. You're distracted, she says gently after the server leaves. He doesn't deny it. I ran into someone today, he replies. Someone important? Yes. For years he has defined himself by control. Controlled growth, controlled image, controlled emotion. Tonight, control feels thin. I have a daughter, he says finally. Pinky doesn't gasp. She doesn't drop her glass. She simply watches him carefully. From before us? She asks. Yes. How old? 6. A small pause. That's significant, she says. Yes. He expects anger. Instead, she looks thoughtful. Did you know? No. She leans back slightly. And now you do. The sentence holds no judgment, just reality. Dinner continues, but it tastes like obligation. Later, alone in his condo office, Clifton scrolls through old photographs stored in cloud archives. Laura laughing in their tiny apartment, a blurry photo of the first prototype he built. He built something powerful. He lost something irreplaceable. The truth is simple. He cannot undo absence, but he can stop extending it. He closes his laptop. For once, he does not check tomorrow's calendar. The next afternoon, Clifton arrives at the bakery at 3:15 p.m. Not as a dramatic gesture, just early enough to help. Laura notices immediately. "You don't have to do this," she says quietly. "I know." Jessie runs over with flour on her nose. "You're back again?" "Yes. Are you staying long?" "As long as I'm allowed." She considers this seriously. "You can help me stir." He rolls up his sleeves. The batter doesn't cooperate with executive authority. It splashes. Jessie laughs loudly. "You're messy," she declares. "I've been called worse." Laura watches from the counter. Not impressed, not softened, observing. At one point his phone buzzes. He glances down. Investor call. He presses decline. Jessie notices. "You forgot your phone." "No," he replies calmly. "I didn't." They bake in uneven rhythm. Jessie talks constantly. About school, about a friend who won't share crayons, about how she wants to open a bigger bakery someday. Clifton listens, not waiting for a pause to speak, just listening. It feels unfamiliar, important. When the oven timer rings, Jessie grabs his hand instinctively and pulls him toward it. He doesn't hesitate. Laura catches that. The instinct matters. As customers filter in and out, Clifton wipes tables, carries boxes, learns how the register works. He makes mistakes. "You have to press confirm," she says, "or it doesn't work." He smiles. Good to know. When closing time comes, he doesn't linger awkwardly. He helps stack chairs. Then he stops near the door. "I'll come tomorrow," he says. Laura folds a towel slowly. "Tomorrow is Tuesday." "I know." She studies him. "We close early." "I know." She nods once. "Okay." No forgiveness declared. No emotional breakthrough. Just permission to return. Saturday morning, Jessie insists he try baking alone. Laura stands back intentionally. Clifton measures carefully. Reads instructions twice. Sets the oven. Waits. The smell changes first. Jessie wrinkles her nose. "Is that supposed to smell like that?" He opens the oven. The tops are dark. Very dark. Jessie bursts into laughter. "You burned them." He stares at the tray. "I may have." She hops onto a stool and inspects them with serious authority. "They're kinda crunchy. Is that bad?" "It depends." She takes a cautious bite. Chews dramatically. "Not terrible," she announces. "But not good." Laura can't suppress her smile. Clifton laughs, genuinely, for the first time since walking into the bakery days ago. Failure here carries no consequence. No stock value drops, no headlines, just a child teasing him and flour dusting his sleeves. Jessie nudges him with her elbow. "You'll get better." He nods. "I plan to." Days turn into a pattern. Clifton doesn't make speeches about change. He adjusts his schedule. He delegates evening calls. He leaves meetings earlier than usual, not dramatically, consistently. One afternoon, Jessie slips her hand into his while crossing the street without thinking. The gesture is automatic, uncalculated. He looks down at their joined hands. She doesn't notice. She trusts. Trust doesn't form from promises. It forms from repetition, from showing up again and again and again. If you believe real change isn't declared, it's demonstrated. Stay with this story, because anyone can apologize. Not everyone can stay long enough to prove they mean it, and Clifton is just beginning to understand the difference. Pinky notices patterns. She always has. It's one of the reasons she thrived beside Clifton. She could read rooms before others realized they were shifting. Now she reads him. He comes home earlier. Not once, repeatedly. His phone rests face down more often. He cancels 2 networking dinners in 1 week. That alone is unusual. One evening she finds him in the kitchen, staring at nothing in particular. "You've changed your rhythm," she says gently. He doesn't pretend not to understand. "Yes." "Is it business?" "No." She studies him quietly. There's no panic in her posture. No defensive energy, just evaluation. "Is there someone else?" she asks. The question is calm. "No," he answers immediately. "Not like that." She waits. He respects that about her. She doesn't chase answers. She allows them to surface. "I have a daughter," he says. The sentence settles between them. Pinky doesn't interrupt. "She's 6. I didn't know. Before we met?" "Yes." A small nod. "And now you're involved?" "I'm trying to be." She walks to the window, folding her arms loosely. "And her mother." Laura. Pinky closes her eyes briefly. Not in anger, in processing. I remember the name, she says quietly. Of course she does. He once mentioned Laura in passing, years ago, as someone who supported him during the early startup phase. He never described the ending. How serious is this? Pinky asks. He takes a breath. It's not about seriousness. It's about responsibility. She turns back to him. And how does that affect us? The question is not accusatory. It's honest. He doesn't rush the answer. It changes what I value. She absorbs that. And what do you value now? He looks at her fully. Presence. Silence follows. Not tense, just clear. They sit across from each other at the dining table. No raised voices. No dramatic pacing. Just two people who built a life efficiently, now examining it honestly. I married ambition, Pinky says quietly. I knew that. He nods. I didn't think ambition would ever look back, she continues. He leans forward slightly. I thought stability was enough. It was, she replies gently. For a while. The admission isn't cruel, it's reflective. He studies her face. You deserve more than divided attention, he says. And you deserve a life that doesn't feel compartmentalized, she responds. The truth lands evenly. They weren't unhappy. They were structured. He thinks back to their wedding. Elegant, intimate, carefully planned. No chaos, no dramatic vows. Just two capable adults agreeing to move forward together. And now, she asks. He hesitates, because this is the part that matters. I can't unknow what I know, he says finally. She's my daughter. Pinky nods once. And the mother? She's not asking for anything. But you are, Pinky says softly. He doesn't deny it. I want to show up, he says. For them? Yes. And for yourself? He pauses. Yes, Pinky leans back, absorbing the honesty. This isn't betrayal, she says slowly. It's redirection. The phrasing surprises him. You're not angry, he says. I'm not blindsided, she replies. There's a difference. She studies him one more time. I always knew there was a part of you that never fully closed a door. He doesn't argue. Is this goodbye? He asks quietly. She exhales. It's adjustment. He waits. Maybe we were meant to meet in a season where efficiency made sense, she continues. Maybe that season is complete. The words aren't dramatic. They're steady. He feels something unexpected. Gratitude. The separation is handled the way their marriage was, deliberately. They speak with attorneys. They divide assets cleanly. No public spectacle. No accusations. One evening, while packing a small suitcase, Clifton pauses at the doorway. I never meant to hurt you, he says. Pinky folds a blouse carefully. I know, I cared about us. I know that too. She zips the suitcase. You built something meaningful, she adds. You just built it elsewhere. The sentence holds no resentment, just clarity. He nods. I hope you find what you're looking for, she says. I think I already did. She smiles faintly. Then don't lose it again. That lands deeper than any confrontation could. When he steps outside the condo that night, there's no sense of collapse. Just transition. For the first time in years, his calendar is not dictating his direction. He isn't choosing chaos. He's choosing alignment. And alignment, unlike ambition, cannot be delegated. Clifton does not announce changes. He restructures quietly. Aether Dynamics appoints an interim operations lead. Board meetings move to mornings. International travel decreases. Investors notice, but performance remains strong. The company was always built to scale. He just never allowed himself to step back. Now he does. 3 afternoons a week he's at the bakery by 3 p.m., not standing awkwardly. Working, boxing orders, sweeping floors, learning supply inventory, taking small local catering calls. He listens when Laura discusses flour costs. He learns which regular prefers lemon over chocolate. He doesn't introduce himself as CEO. He introduces himself as Clifton. Jessie adapts to his presence in stages. The first week she watches him carefully. The second, she assigns him jobs. Table 3 needs napkins, she tells him with authority. Yes, ma'am, he replies. The third week, she stops checking whether he's coming. She assumes he will. One Thursday afternoon, his phone rings during a meeting at the bakery table. A venture capitalist. He silences it without glancing at the screen. Jessie notices. That sounded important. It can wait. She studies him. For how long? He smiles slightly. As long as you need. She nods once, satisfied. Trust doesn't explode into existence. It settles. One rainy afternoon. Light, steady. They leave the bakery together. Jessie runs ahead toward the crosswalk. Halfway across, she slows and reaches back without looking. Her hand finds his automatically. He doesn't comment, doesn't squeeze tighter. He simply matches her pace. Across the street, Laura watches that detail carefully. Not the hand, the instinct. There's no performance in him. No urgency to be praised, just repetition. And repetition builds something speeches never could. Children test boundaries not to challenge authority, but to confirm stability. Jessie begins asking questions. Are you coming to my school thing next week? What thing? It's not important, she shrugs. It is if you asked. She narrows her eyes slightly. You won't be busy? I'll move things. You always move things, if they matter. She considers this carefully. Okay, the day of the school presentation arrives. Aether Dynamics is hosting a regional strategy summit that same morning. Clifton attends the first hour. Then he leaves, not dramatically, not announcing why. He sits in a small elementary school auditorium on a plastic chair that creaks when he shifts his weight. Jessie walks on stage holding a cardboard solar system model slightly crooked. She scans the crowd. Her eyes find him. Her shoulders straighten. She presents clearly. Afterward, she runs toward him. You came, I said I would. She searches his face for exaggeration, finds none. Another afternoon, she asks, why didn't you know about me? The question lands softly. He kneels slightly so they're level. I made choices that kept me busy. Too busy. She tilts her head. Was I a secret? No. Then what? He answers carefully. I wasn't paying attention. She absorbs that longer than expected. Are you paying attention now? Yes. She nods. Okay. Children do not need perfect explanations. They need consistency. That evening, she hands him a drawing. 3 figures again. This time, the tallest one has glasses. You look smarter with glasses, she explains. He laughs. I'll consider it. The tallest figure is labeled now. Clifton, not unknown, not blank, named. Laura does not soften quickly. She watches patterns. She notes punctuality. She notes follow-through. She notes what he doesn't do. He doesn't overcompensate with gifts. He doesn't attempt to buy affection. He brings groceries. He fixes a loose cabinet hinge without being asked. He listens when Jessie struggles with homework instead of solving it for her. One evening, after closing, Laura stays behind to wipe down the counter. Clifton stacks chairs silently. You don't have to prove anything every day, she says without looking at him. I'm not proving, he replies. I'm practicing. She pauses. That's different. Yes, she studies him. You reduced your role at the company. I delegated. That wasn't easy for you. No. Why now? He leans against the counter slightly. I built something that could function without me, and I don't want to build a life that lands. She doesn't step closer, but she doesn't step away either. Staying isn't impressive, she says quietly. I'm not chasing impressive anymore. She searches his expression for performance, finds none, just steadiness. Jessie bursts out from the back room. Mommy, he finally made muffins that aren't terrible. Clifton raises his hands in surrender. Progress. Laura laughs softly, not the careful laugh from earlier, a natural one. For the first time since he walked through that door weeks ago, she looks less guarded. Not because he asked, because he stayed. It happens on a Tuesday. No celebration, no special occasion, just closing time. Jessie has fallen asleep in the booth near the window, a half-finished worksheet under her cheek. The bakery lights are dimmed, the last tray washed, the register counted. Clifton stands beside Laura near the front window, watching the quiet street. For a moment, neither speaks. Then he says, I can't rewrite what I missed. She doesn't respond immediately. He continues, voice steady. I won't pretend I deserve anything automatically. I just want to stay. The word sits there, stay. Laura folds a towel carefully before answering. Staying isn't grand, she says. It's Tuesdays, it's patience, it's showing up when it's inconvenient. He nods. I know. She turns to face him fully now. You don't get credit for intensity, she adds. You get credit for consistency. I'm not here for credit. Silence again, not tense, measured. You're different, she says quietly. I had to be. No, she corrects gently. You chose to be. That matters. Jessie stirs in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. Clifton glances toward her instinctively. Laura notices. That instinct. Again, she steps closer. Not dramatically, just enough. He rests his forehead lightly against hers. No urgency, no reclaiming, just grounding. You can stay, she whispers. It isn't forgiveness, it's permission. And permission feels earned. 6 months later, Hearth and Honey opens a second location. Smaller than the first, bright, warm. Clifton invests, but not as CEO. No press release, no public announcement, just paperwork signed quietly. He reviews contracts at the bakery table while Jessie practices spelling beside him. Spell chocolate, she challenges. CHOC. She interrupts. You forgot the second O. He laughs. I stand corrected. Laura watches them both, shaking her head slightly. This expansion isn't about scale, it's about sustainability. Clifton still attends board meetings, still makes strategic decisions, but at 3 p.m., he's somewhere else. Not because he has to, because he chooses to be. The elementary school auditorium is louder than before. Jessie waits backstage in a paper costume. She peeks through the curtain. Front row, she whispers to herself. Clifton sits exactly there, Laura beside him. Not stiff, not distant, just present. Jessie steps onto the stage. She doesn't search long this time. She already knows. After the performance, she runs toward them and grabs both their hands without hesitation. Did I do good? She asks. You were incredible, Clifton says. Laura squeezes his fingers lightly. He doesn't make promises anymore. He keeps appointments. Some men measure success in valuations, others measure it in attendance. Clifton built a company that protects digital futures, but the most important thing he learned was simpler. Presence cannot be outsourced. It cannot be scheduled for later. It must be chosen, again and again. And this time he isn't promising he's there. If this story reminded you that real success isn't always loud, that sometimes it's just showing up when it matters, stay with us. Because the quiet choices are often the ones that change everything. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that success means nothing without the people you show up for, then subscribe, not just for dramatic moments, but for stories about real choices, quiet growth, and the kind of love that's built through consistency. Because the most powerful transformations aren't loud, they're lived, and we tell stories like that here.